Yes. Just come in.
Hi guys, sorry.
Good morning.
Morning, bye.
All right. Hello, everyone. We are live. Tim Watson here with Meet the Masters, figuring out paperwork and switching out offices. I'm joined today by Master Jorgensen, who is doing some sharing. I'm going to do that as well. Actually, I forgot my phone. How we doing, sir?
Doing good. How are you doing, sir?
I'm great. It's one of those days where actually kind of exciting. I'm going to visit Mr. Richardson at Richardson's Martial Arts Academy tonight. So I'm get a different change of scenery for once from what I usually do. Still teaching karate, but you know. So let's see here. So yeah, we're gonna teach him some sparring and get some of his students ready for U.S. Nationals coming up. So that should be pretty exciting.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm actually gonna be there working security. So
yes, I've been helping Master Heiss organize and make a spreadsheet of all the volunteers, and I saw that you popped up there. You correct me if I'm wrong. Do you usually do security with Master Merrill?
Yeah, usually world championships. Haven't done much with regionals because I'm usually doing other duties at our Region 22 championships. But I've done worlds with him a number of times, and he asked if I could be there for nationals. So we'll definitely be there. And like I said, it'd be good to see everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine if Master Merrill asks you to do something, you just say yes, sir. And
most of the time. We're on friendly enough terms that I can disagree with them once in a while, but I try not to push it.
Well, yeah, that's exactly. You guys have, I'm sure, been friends and training partners at this point for how long? 30 years, close to 30 years.
It's been a while. I don't want to count. It's been a while. He's one of the few people that make me feel small. So
yeah, right. Yes, he is a mountain of a man. So we were talking offline a little bit about the Dojang. You have two different Dojangs, correct?
Correct. I have a commercial school, and then I visit once in a while. But pretty much our YMCA school is run by the other Master Jorgensen. Who at her school, I'm the other Master Jorgensen, but Master Ricky Jorgensen runs our YMCA school. So.
Yeah, it's the same way. It's Master Watson, and people is like, just call it. It's like, which Master Watson? I was like, well, if I say Master Watson, I'm referring to the other Master Watson.
It's less confusing than people think.
Yes, I asked to be called Master T, since my first name is Tim, but yeah, it didn't stick. And there already is a Master T, so. But he's in a different region, so I thought that would work, but so let's talk about we talk about martial arts here. Anything you've been putting a lot of videos, not a lot of videos, but every once in a while you'll put a video out with your training. What's the inspiration to post those videos?
I mean, it's more for personal betterment than it is anything else. I feel like if I do record something and watch myself, it's a good way of self-correction and self-reflection on where I am and what I'm doing. And if it does help benefit or motivate anybody else, that's kind of a side benefit. But mostly I'm looking at it to try to, like I said, one of the purposes of Tung Shido is self-betterment. So it's a goal. If I can look at myself and say, hey, I got a ways to go at something, it's a way to push myself. So that's kind of why.
Yeah, I like that. It's also one of those things where if you put it out into the world, you kind of want to look decent.
Yeah.
So you push yourself to try a little harder sometimes when it's going to be out there for everyone to watch.
definitely.
I'm trying to think of what some of the ones that you've posted recently. Mostly they're forms. I feel like there was there one that was inspired by Tatiana Bambushu? Was that a
Yeah.
jumping one?
She was doing some dive roll stuff, so I just kind of threw it out there as the old man doing it. So
The old man, right?
yeah, I mean, I know there's a generation definitely above me, but I'm not as young as I used to be.
That's what happens when you know it. I love doing these interviews. You can tell the generational differences, like I would say the generation before you kind of started, if you know, some of them possibly started in the late teens to 20s. And then like what I would consider your generation, or at least like that 80s kids that started in the 80s are the first ones that really you see quite a few that were, you know, started at 9, 10, 11, and that are now lifelong martial artists. You know, guys like yourself, Master Adam White, Master Setianto, Master Mabrook. You know, it's interesting to see you've literally grown up as a martial artist.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but that's kind of how it was for me. Right in the 80s is when that boom of kids started, when it first really, I started when I was 10. A lot of other people, my generation, very similar age group. It's kind of as young as they took them back then, to be honest.
Yeah, so you started when you were 10. Was there a kids class? You started with Master Vaugh, correct?
Correct. So, you know, whole story, my story is, like I said, a little bit of a cliche, but I was basically a giant nerd when it wasn't cool to be one. So I was kind of unmercifully picked on, and I wanted to learn how to fight. There were only a couple martial arts schools in my area, really. I had always asked my mom about it, but she was kind of hesitant for a number of reasons. One being that I quit everything I had ever done pretty much before that, whether it was, you know, sports and soccer or whatever, you know, band, school activities, things like that, just didn't click with me. I was very physically uncoordinated as a child. So, like I said, it's kind of a cliche, but that's how it started, being bullied, wanting to fight. Actually, Master Vaughn opened his first club at the gymnastics studio where my sister was taking gymnastics. And during one of their meets, he had brought in some of the other instructors and did a demonstration. So my dad and I kind of watched that, and we started together there in 1985. So there was a kids class initially, but that school was small. There were plenty of times where we trained together as kids and adults. Eventually that gymnastics studio closed down. So we were without a home for a while. A few of us actually met in my parents' basement for a while and trained with Master Vaughn. He'd come over, and then shortly after that, he started to work into the YMCA. And I trained most of my years at the Phoenixville YMCA, you know, with Master Vaughn and Vaughn's Dojang.
I feel like at some point he had quite a few. Did he have quite a few YMCA programs?
Yeah, there were a number of schools. Master Adam White was running a school at a YMCA, and one of his other students at another one. So he probably at one point had 3 or 4 YMCA programs and a commercial school going. So it's kind of where I had the impetus to start a YMCA program myself from doing it for so many years. It was a way in and something I was familiar with. So.
Yeah, I mean, if there's someone out there that's watching, you know, it's obviously a little different now, but you still run a YMCA program with your wife, like you said. What are some of the advantages of getting started in a program like that?
Biggest advantages are lack of overhead. So if you can get the right agreement going with them, you don't have to worry so much about the rent expenses and the utilities and the advertising and everything else. I mean, yes, you have to do some of that. Obviously, I don't get all my space and advertising and everything completely for free, but it's a way to start without a lot of overhead. It's getting harder and harder to get into those programs because you'll find that most of them already have something at this point. But if you can do it, it's definitely a recommend for me as a way of getting started.
Yeah, some people fail to realize that if you open up a commercial location, you are now a small business owner.
Correct.
You're not just a karate guy anymore. You have bills to pay and rent and all that stuff. A couple people saying hi. Natalie Walker says hello from Great Britain. Master Marco says good to see y'all. He mentioned like both your Tungsudo videos and your meticulously painted figures.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, you said you were kind of a nerdy kid, and it makes me happy as a fellow comic book nerd that you still embrace your comic nerd as an adult, and one of your hobbies is, painting and customizing action figures, right?
Absolutely, which is, it sounds weird to people that aren't into that, but it's a much bigger community than what you would think. Ton of Instagram and YouTube videos and everything else. So, I've gotten better at it. And after a while, you get a collection and you have a lot of characters, but then you're like, hey, I really wish they would make a figure of this guy, and they don't. So it's like, okay, well, I'll make it myself.
So I guess that was basically it, because nowadays they're pretty prolific, but I remember as a kid and a teen, you couldn't find a lot. You could find the X-Men and sometimes Spider-Man, but outside of that, there wasn't a whole lot of a market for that type of stuff. Now they just market it towards us as adults.
Pretty much. I mean, they say in the toy world that they still market towards kids, but no, it's mostly marketed towards adult collectors at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. Especially that type of stuff. Mr. Tom Lyon says, good morning.
Good morning.
So you talked about getting your start with Master Vaughn. How long did you actually train at Vaughn's Dojang?
Oh man, I mean, back and forth. Like I started, like I said, in 1985. Trained straight through till 92 when I graduated high school. Went to college, and still in the summertime I would still train with Master Vaughn, and then after college I still came back and trained and taught at his commercial school. Trained with him for many years after that until I got married. So altogether, I don't know, but I've never considered myself anything else but Master Vaughn's student. So, like I said, goes back to 85 and all the way through until I moved to Pittsburgh, pretty much.
Wow.
That was 2002. So that whole time, however many years that is.
Wow. Yeah. No, almost 20. In that time, I'm sure you had a lot of training partners. Can you talk about some of the guys that are still around that people might recognize names of?
Sure. So, I mean, going back to Vaughn's Dojang, there's basically 3 different generations. I was first generation. I was literally the first student that signed up when he opened.
Wow.
My student number was 001. So, but in that generation, I consider myself Master Adam White. Joined very shortly after that. He was actually my dad taught junior high phys ed and health, and Master Adam White was one of his students. And through conversation stuff, found out he did martial arts because my dad and I started training together. And then we all kind of lived very close to each other. We used to ride to the Dojang together all the time. So I'm pretty much my best friend growing up. So Master Adam White, myself, Master Dave Roberts, who moved to Arizona and then North Carolina, was also an original member of Vaughn's Dojang. He trained till Chodon Bo, till his job moved him out to Arizona and trained with Master Khalid. So himself, me, and Master White are the only one in that first generation. Then when we went to the YMCA, we started bringing other people in. So, I mean, I'll miss somebody, but you got people like Master Sandy Lipstein, Master Frank Altieri, Wayne Rosenkrantz, Scott Summers, Dr. Painter. There are probably Master Winsco. Master Winsco was actually kind of in that 3rd generation at the main school in Audubon. I was actually one of her instructors back in the day. So I remember her as like a green brown belt, but yeah, it was a lot of different generations. So Master Vaughn's been absolutely prolific in producing Kodanja and Masters, and great job going back, like I said, from that first generation with me and Master White all the way till now. Keep seeing more and more. So it's absolutely great to see, and people continuing to come around.
Right. We had Don testing in Region 8 last Saturday, and when they bowed in as Kodanjaw, it was Master Vaugh and Master Godwin. And when I think of Region 8 and guys that I consider role models and honestly legends, it's Master Vaugh and Master Godwin.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Speaking of Master Vaugh, once you went to college, you went to Penn State, correct? And then you started training up there, and he started that program, correct?
Yeah, that actually is correct. So history all has kind of a lineage through Grandmaster Shin and then Master Michael White, who passed away. But Master Michael White started in Phillipsburg. That's where Master Vaughn lived, and started his training. And he actually started the school at Penn State Martial Arts Group, I believe is an ROTC program. And then it kind of moved on from there to become a school club. So it became the Penn State Martial Arts Group. And when he had moved to the eastern side to start his own school out there, that's when he turned things over to Master K.
When people talk about how training back in the day was hard, and then I hear or read stories that Master Vaughn has wrote of his training with Master Michael White in the day.
Yeah, even I didn't get quite that. I mean, Master Vaughn's tough, no doubt about it. When I think of the word warrior, Master Vaugh is the person that pops in my head, embodies that, and lived it in a way many of us will never be able to understand. But yeah, I mean, we trained hard. All classes were at least 2 hours long back in the day. I can remember a time when we first got to the YMCA school where getting in there wasn't the easiest thing to schedule. So we would train on a Monday or Tuesday, and then Friday, and we'd be there, 9, 10 o'clock Friday night, and then get up and be back at 9 a.m. the next morning for another class. So, eventually that evened out a little bit better. But
right. I was just say, it's nice to, especially when you have your own location, have the opportunity to have classes more often and consistent. But I'm sure there's something to be said for those long, hour and a half to 2 hour training sessions back then.
Oh, definitely. And then, you spoke of going to Master K. Master K, it's a little bit different. Kind of always approached things in a way of where he wouldn't just train you and give you things. It was kind of, okay, I'm going to give you this little thing, and then you have to work to figure it out. But a lot of his classes, they were scheduled 2 hours, but we'd often be there more like 4. So classes in Penn State were scheduled when I was there from 8 to 10, and we would often be there till midnight.
Well, I guess,
more like instructors' classes in a way.
Right. I was going to say that's an advantage of working with college students.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a different world. You're training with people all your own age. That's the one thing I'll say when I was training with Master Vaughn. Yes, I started at a kid's class, but I grew to a certain age where I was either at the Phoenixville Y, I was either younger than the people that were coming in or older than the people coming in. There weren't a lot of people my age and Master Adams' White age. We were teenagers coming in, so it was a different experience at college to be able to train with, more of a peer group. I mean, I was an Edon when I got there, so there's still a little bit of awkwardness in the difference in rank and stuff to figure out, but yeah, it was different training with people all your own age and all similar backgrounds and interests. And
right, yeah, even someone who is a lower rank belt, if they're your same age, they just pick things up quicker. Yeah, so you talked about the differences of Master Vaughn and Master K, and you talked about like kind of him giving you those little things and you had to figure out. That immediately made me think of Master Homecheck. He's kind of the same way as that, right?
He did. I mean, Master Homecheck literally graduated Penn State the year before I got there. So
yeah,
definitely similar backgrounds.
My earliest memories of Region 8, like outside of my own Dojang, was going to the black belt camp as a Chodan Bo. And I remember taking one of his one-step classes and, him saying something like, oh, you need something to someone, you need something, where are the Chodon bows? I think that was the same time I took a class. It was you and Master White were teaching a sparring seminar. And that was the first time, I took a class like that outside of my own dojang. How it seemed like you guys had been doing that often. And if not, you did it a lot.
I could literally tell you exactly how that came about. And it was a lesson from Master Vaugh. Master White and I were both Samdans. We taught at the school, but we hadn't done a lot at the regional level. Master Vaughn would occasionally send us to an instructor's class or something like that, but we hadn't done a lot of teaching at the regional level. Master Vaughn was actually scheduled to teach the sparring seminars, and he asked Master White and I to assist, and he would teach. So, usually we would assist. And one year, finally, Master Vaughn kind of decided it's time for you guys to step up. So he was scheduled to teach. He taught the whole first seminar and then taught some of the second one, because usually we'd have 3 to 4 seminars. And after that, he was like, all right, guys, you do the next one. And that became a thing from there that, Master Adam White and I would team up and teach the sparring seminars at the Region 8 camp. So it's kind of how that came about. And it was a good lesson and a good thing that, hey, sometimes you're going to get pushed out there and say, it's time to step up, do it.
Yes, I find, every once in a while I'll have someone come up to me and it's like, well, are we going to do that? Are we going to do a training for this? And it's like, yeah, we'll do a training for that, but just do it. Because that's how I learn. And as I do these interviews more and more, that's pretty much how everyone learned. Trial by fire. It's like, okay,
Absolutely.
It's your turn. And you're like, what, wait. And they just close the door and leave.
I won't pretend I've never done that to any of my black belts.
We all have, of course. I've done that before. It's like, I'm going to go sit in the office. The floor is yours. If, something catches on fire, I'll come out and help you. When did so we just talked about the sparring class. You have early memories of teaching or helping out with classes with Master Vaughn?
Yeah, so Master Vaughn, Master Vaughn had kind of a challenging job situation for a while where he would get moved around different places before he went full time. So he would rely a lot on, my dad initially, because he was older, to help teach classes, and then myself and Adam White also. Eventually, Adam was given, Adam's a couple years older than me, so once he got into his late teens, he was given charge of the kids' class at the YMCA, and I would kind of help him out with that. But I probably started teaching and helping teaching from my early teens and up. Finally got my instructor certification when I was 18. There was no such official thing as an instructor trainee program back then. So it was kind of, you're not an instructor till you're 18. So that would have been 92, right before I went off to college. So right around that time and in the summer times, Master Vaughn actually gave me a class of the youth black belts at Vaughn's Dojang. Was like, all right, you were one of these guys, so you kind of know what it's like to be a teenager youth black belt. So I want you to take them under your wing. And so that was my first real opportunity that he gave me to really be in charge of my own group, was the youth black belts at Vaughn's. And that was a really fun time because there were a lot of them. From there, obviously when I went to college, Master K again would be occasionally, all right, Master Jorgensen teach. Well, it wasn't Master Jorgensen then, but because Edon got my Samdan under Master Vaugh during those years. And then eventually I went back, taught from Master Vaugh in his commercial school. And then eventually Master Vaugh decided it kind of came full circle, and Master Vaugh sent me and Adam White back to the Phoenixville Y, where Master White was teaching the youth classes and I was teaching the adult classes, and that continued straight up through until after I was married and eventually, moved to start my own studio.
Wow. So yeah, it's fun to, I've had the opportunity to teach with some of my good friends, and if you have a good rapport with someone, on the floor, it just becomes, one, it's so much fun, but it just becomes easy. because you can kind of you kind of know what they're thinking without them even saying it.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard when I moved, but it's just like people say, you know, you don't see somebody for years, but you see them and you just start up conversation and everything, just like you just saw them yesterday or a week ago or whatever. Master White and I have been friends since we were kids, and anytime we get together, it's just, things click right back together again. So,
yeah, it's still hard to not think of guys like you and all the masters as not Region 8. So maybe we talk about that. You're part of Region 22, right? Region 22.
Correct.
Yeah. So remind me, when did that happen? What year was that? Do you remember?
So officially it was 2010.
Okay.
Right, that Region 22 started. Going back a little bit, one of the reasons I'm Region 22, there's a number of reasons, but back in the day, if you wanted to be a master, you pretty much had to start a school. And there was this whole radius rule and everything else. This still exists, but where you have to get permission from another studio owner. And at the time I mapped it out, and there was literally nowhere in the area I lived that was not already covered by somebody's territory. I had tried about 3 different places to open a school, and I have absolutely no ill will towards anybody for their own reasons of protecting their own business, which is part of why this rule exists. I was turned down from starting schools in those locations, which is fine. I moved on, tried another one. Eventually, I had a conversation with Master Homecheck at one of the Region 8 after parties, actually. Sat down and I said, I was like, I've been trying. I said, I'm going to give it another year. If it doesn't work out, I'm going to move to Pittsburgh. My wife is from that area originally, so that was an easy choice. I was good friends with Master Homecheck, and Master Homecheck looked right at me and said, no offense, Mark, but I hope things don't work out for you. Because at the time, himself and his one student, there were only 2 schools in the Pittsburgh area, World Town Citadel. And now I believe, between the satellite schools and instructors, I think we have about 7. So not like Philadelphia, but I mean, it's still over the years, it's grown. Region 22 came about, mostly because of Master Homecheck. I'll admit, he was driving force behind that, but we sat down. We actually had Grandmaster Shin out for a visit about a year before in 2009. Visited the different schools in the area, taught a black belt class, came to a big combined GUP test. It was a great experience. And we sat down breakfast one time, and Master Homecheck and I didn't even bring it up. He looked right back at both of us and said, look, I know you guys are ready to start a new region. He's like, other people aren't. He's like, you need to give me 1 more year and it's going to happen. So, yes, we were ready for it. And yes, we were a driving force behind it. But in the end, it was Grandmaster Shin's decision that it was time to do that.
Yeah. You talked about all the Dojangs being so close. The last interview I did was with Master Sonny Fredericks, who's in Alaska, who said that the closest Dojang to her was 5 hours away as Master Homecheck, 5 or 6 hours. So it's one of those embarrassment of riches sometimes in Region 8. People don't realize how lucky they are to basically throw a rock and you hit another World Tongsudo school.
Right.
So you just mentioned Grandmaster Shin. Do you have any early memories of meeting him, or is it more just, him signing your dobak as a kid? Or
no, it wasn't that. I mean, it was so. You gotta think about how things were back in the early 80s, and Master Vaughn in particular. Master Vaughn's relationship with Grandmaster Shin was more than an instructor-student relationship. They were more like family. So I met Grandmaster Shin probably when I was a white or orange or green belt from coming to our studio and sitting on panels for our GUP tests. And he would continue to do that all the way up through when I was a Samdan. So, like you said, people don't realize how lucky they have it. I didn't realize how lucky I had that opportunity with Grandmaster Shin. I was always kind of an introvert, so I didn't take that opportunity to talk to him quite as much as I should have, which again, Master Vaughn would occasionally sit his black belts down next to Grandmaster Shin at a GUP panel or a clinic or whatever and be like, here you go, you have to talk to him now. So that's kind of how I got to know Grandmaster Shin when I was a kid. In later years, again, he would continue to visit, and we train under him, and our regional instructors classes. So we absolutely had access to him from the beginning. A couple different stories about Graham. And I remember when I got promoted to Samdan, him shaking my hand and saying, "Is like, you stick with this, Mark. You'll be youngest master someday." And I knew age-wise that wasn't really feasible because there were a lot of people who started a lot younger than me. But still, having that encouragement, the day you get that third stripe and he's already saying, "You're going to be a master." So absolutely, he was inspiring. He knew everybody by name. He knew where you were, who you were. I can remember a dinner at Penn State when my wife had started and we sat down across from Grandmaster Shin and he looked right at her and said, "Hi, Ricky, how are you doing?" And then afterwards, when he got up to get his food, she looked at him and said, "Why does he know who I am?" And she had trained in international Tang Soo Do with Master C.S. Kim. And even she said he was a very different kind of Grandmaster. He just kind of knew everybody and what you were about. Funniest story for me with Grandmaster Shin was when I tested for fifth on my first year. He was coming out to the whole group on the floor to do a pep talk right before we started. We used to start late at night after everything. So it's 10 p.m. when you're starting your test. And he's out on the floor. He's like, I know you guys have trained a long time this weekend. I know you're tired. He's like, I know you're old. I have your sheet right here. And he's listing out ages. And he's like, I see you 65, 52, blah, blah, blah. And he just stopped and looked at the sheet. This was a while ago. Said, "Who's 37?" As loud as he could. And I had to raise my hand. And he's like, Master Jorgensen. He's like, "You're just young baby. I didn't know." And he just walked away. And that was the end of the pep talk. They're like, "All right, I guess it's time to start now." I'm sitting there, "Well, do I still get to test?" But yeah, it was, like I said, he knew everything. He had a great sense of humor. He could be hard when he needed to be. He always knew the right way to give the right lessons. So I miss Grandmaster Shin tremendously. And like I said, I wish I had known how lucky I was to be around him as often as I was coming up through the years.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to share those stories, because if you think 2012, it's almost been 10 years, and there's people who are going to Samdan and then beyond that will have never got to train with him, which is kind of great.
It's crazy to think for me that exists. But
we got a question. Michael Lee from Region 14 says, is there anything that you miss from like taking Master Vaugh classes on a regular basis, or it's something that you wish you'd be able to do more of with him?
Just that ability to have somebody push you hard. It's hard sometimes to push yourself when you're an instructor, unless you go and train under somebody else on a regular basis. I get together with other people. Somebody I did miss with Mr. Rashad Olson was another one that trained with Master Vaughn back in the day and is now fourth dan and lives in the Pittsburgh area. So my wife and myself and him, who's been a friend of mine, we get together and train on our own and try to push each other. But it's still not the same as having that higher rank instructor just, there to push you. And, there's no doubt that Master Vaughn knows how to fight, and he taught that, and he would spar with us all the time. I miss sparring with Master Vaughn because I always learned something. Every time I thought maybe I had him a little bit, he would just come right back and be like, "Nope." It's like, "I've been doing this longer. I know how to get you to. I've been watching you your whole life." So there was always a lesson. I remember one of my favorite experiences with Master Vaughn. At the time, I was like scared. I was a student at Penn State, and he called me once on a Friday night and was like, "Mark, how you doing?" I was like, "Oh, good, sir. At college doing my thing and learning." He's like, "All right." He's like, "I'm in the area. It's like, I want you to meet me at Black Moshannon State Park tomorrow morning at sunrise. We're going to train." I'm thinking, okay, I have no idea where that is, but yes, sir. You're not going to not take that opportunity. And this was, pre-MapQuest and GPS and all that. I had to use a map to find the place. So I'm driving around for a while, and finally, I get there because I left super early because I'm like, I got to figure out how to get to this place. And He's out there on a little piece of sand by a little lake or pond or something, and we trained out there on the sand and sparred for a long while, and yeah, that was a great day. That's the kind of training, it's the old school stuff that, training outside with your master one-on-one. You don't get a lot of that today, but absolutely, that's something I miss.
That's cool. That's like martial arts movie style. You get called the day before and it's like, meet me out here, and you get there and you're on a beach. You can just hear the 80s music in the background.
Absolutely. It would have been mid-90s, but it still felt 80s.
Yeah, right. A little montage action.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to date you that much.
No. I mean, I definitely go back to the 80s, so you can date me that way. But that particular day was in the 90s. But
yeah, well, one of the things that I meant to bring up in the beginning was when we started this project of like talking to masters and things like that. There were four of us who eventually did interviews, Master Fairley, Master Satianto, and yourself. And I think you were the one who, other than me, did the most. What was the motivation to want to do these interviews for you?
so, I mean, it's a combination of things. One, I knew even then that it was going to be really hard for one person to do everybody. And I give you all the props in the world for continuing to get all this done, because, I mean, it's a crazy amount of work. So I set originally a goal for myself of, okay, well, I'll start doing the people in Region 22, because, I mean, let's be honest, for the most part, when it started, the people in Region 8 were going to interview the people they knew from Region 8. That's kind of how it started. So I started a similar way. Was interviewing the people from I mean, you've reached out, you're international now, let alone interregion. But at the time, it was mostly the Region 8 masters. So I said, all right, I'm going to do Region 22 masters. And I did a couple of Region 8 masters as well, just because I was on good terms with a number of them, either because of friends or just talking on Facebook. I mean, Master Robinson came about because I was talking to him on Facebook for a completely unrelated issue, and it just came up as, hey, has anybody asked you to do an interview? That's how that one came about, but mostly it was for that reason. But the first one I did was a Master Home Check, and it was a little bit hard for me to share this, but literally during that interview, both of us got a text from Master Merrill and said, as soon as this is over, I need you to call me. Didn't say what it was about, and saying, we're like, okay. And that was the day that Master K passed away. It was right when I was interviewing with Master Home Check. Got that news right afterwards that Master K had passed away. And I had literally already emailed Master K trying to set up an interview with him. So it became not just that, hey, I want to interview my friends, but a thing of, how many people wish we had more recorded video of Grandmaster Shin and Grandmaster Bodwin and all of Master Beam and Master Casarano and all of those masters who have since passed. We wish we had more of a record of them to know who they were and what they did. So that's kind of why it continued, and that's why I'm glad to see you continuing to do it as well.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And honestly, that is one of the reasons why I continue to do it, because it's not easy, but it is easy, right? Like, I just have to reach out. It's one of those, it's like, I don't want to get out of the habit of it, right? Because it's hard to get back into it. And like you said, I think you're either, interview 69 or 70 for me, but then there's 300 plus masters out there. But it's just one of those, it's like, I'm going to just keep going and, interview for that exact reason that you said. I don't want to miss someone else again. Like, talking to Master Fredericks about Master Wick, and I've talked to Master Fairley about Grandmaster Bodwin. Wishing I could have talked to those guys, but Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm just going to throw a shout out to, if there are masters out there, do you feel like you want to be part of this? I know Master Watson will be open to you contacting him. Don't necessarily have to wait. For those of you who have declined, I will say, if you can, reconsider. I think it's worth it. And, continuing forward, if somebody really wants me to interview them, you can contact me, but I have less time since the studio is reopened. I know Master Watson's probably in a similar situation, so I shouldn't make that excuse, but, reach
Hey,
out and get it done.
All I'm going to say is I reached out to him and he made it work. So if he can make it work for me, he can do it. And yeah, that's an interesting point. I don't know if you ever had anyone reach out to you, but I've never had anyone.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're all taught from a very young age, humility, humility, humility. Right. That's why even when I was doing it, it wasn't about me. So I wasn't going to be like, oh, well, I should say, hey, Master Watson, you should interview me. No, I'm not. we all feel that way, right? We all want to be humble and say, if I'm deserving, then someone will ask me to do it, kind of thing. But no, if you're a master in this association, you're absolutely worthy of your rank and worthy of being interviewed. So don't be afraid to do that.
It really, at the end of the day, it's a conversation. I always say it's two martial arts nerds talking about martial arts.
Very much so.
Right. So if you like talking about martial arts and you have, stories to share, then, that's what this is for. Mr. Bracco says, I've heard that you're an excellent fighter. Any good sparring stories?
I mean, honestly, that day with Master Vaughn's one of my best sparring experiences. Going back to a lesson where I said, every time I thought I'd get him, he would get me back. I was young at the time and spry and jumping. I remember throwing a side kick. One of Master Vaughn's favorite moves was straight out of the Pyongyang, was he'd reach and grab your hand and whip your leg across. So he grabbed onto my side kick, but I was able to jump and came around and was the wheel kick past his face. He was like, hey, that was pretty good. And about 2 seconds later, he popped an axe kick and put his heel right on my forehead and just boom, stopped it. That's pretty good too. But just every time he thought you got him, he would have something. He had a wicked spinning back kick that I've tried to duplicate to this day, and still he'd be looking you right in the eyes and hit you with a spinning back kick. And I still don't entirely know how he managed to do that, but it was so straight and so separation of upper and lower body. I can remember a time once when we were real young in my basement, Master Adam White came over and we were just doing sparring. We'd go back and forth from intense to soft to sticky hands, whatever else. And by the time we looked at the clock, about 2.5, 3 hours had passed. I don't think I could handle that now. I still do stuff with Mr. Olson. So sparring is definitely, a huge thing when I can do it with somebody I really enjoy, especially when there's somebody at your level to push you. I did a lot of tournament fighting over the years, had my share of wins, had my share of losses, had my share of disqualifications. There's always somebody when you're a tournament competitor. I look at there's always basically 3 tiers when you're a tournament competitor, right? There's the people that are just always better than you, no matter what you do. So for me, that was people like Master Fisher and Sal Convento, and they were always just going to be better than me because honestly, they worked that harder than I did at the time. Then there was kind of your peer level where sometimes you would beat them, sometimes they would beat you and push you back and forth. And then there's a level, honestly, there's going to be a level coming up behind you. And all 3 of those levels are going to push you to be better because that higher level is going to push you to try to get there. And that level that's there that you're back and forth with is going to push you. But then there's those younger guys coming up pushing you as well. I can remember my last sparring match was with Dante Davis, and he kicked my butt because he was just way faster than me. But I basically stopped competing a little before I got to master rank, but I kind of stopped competing because there were people in the same division as me that I taught as white belts. So I was telling me, I'd been a Samdan for a while at that point. Time to let that younger generation step up.
Yeah, it's funny. And I say this to people all the time, and it'll be like, oh, that's a really good kick, or that's a really good jump spin. And it's one of those, it's like, I try to continue to push myself because there's always someone younger who is, pushing right behind you. I actually got a rare opportunity to spar with the class last night. Master Kaluzny was able to watch the group, so I jumped in and put on my gear and sparred with some of the younger kids. And every once in a while you got to let them know.
Oh, absolutely. I still do that myself. Absolutely. Yeah, you got to let them know once in a while. Yeah, your old instructor can still fight if he needs to.
Yeah. One of the guys he said something. He's like, man, he's like, you're always the guy that pushes me. And it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
I was there at one point. I'm still there, depending on who's in the room. If Master Davis or Master Mabrook's there.
There's a lot of stuff at Penn State. I mean, there's a guy who trains with Master Gallagher now, Sean Campbell. He was a Dojang and a black belt. I was at Penn State. Both the Petermans were friends of mine, and we trained together while we were at Penn State. So sparring Master Peterman was a lot like sparring myself. We were both very similar size, similar build, similar way of approaching things at the time. I'm sure he's come up with a lot of his own new tricks since then, but I mean, it was definitely an interesting challenge of over the years between anything from sparring Master Vaugh on the beach and anything goes to the tournaments and the restrictions there. So definitely still enjoy sparring.
Yeah. Any points or tips for someone getting ready for the U.S. Nationals? I obviously share stuff with my students. What are some of the things that you share with your students when it comes to getting ready for tournaments?
Yeah, it's a hard one for me. I like tournaments, but honestly, it was never a giant focus of mine. I did well at them because it was kind of a thing that you just did when you were a black belt. I mean, I used to go to tournaments and I'd say 80-90% of the black belts in the region would compete. We'd have Region 8 championships where you'd have 25 Samdans competing against each other. But, preparation-wise, sparring-wise, it's a difficult thing for me because it was a different time back then. I mean, I used to win in sparring matches by kicking people in the head. You get 2 points for that. Nowadays, you kick somebody in the head, you get a warning or disqualification. Right. So I've had to kind of take that back a little bit. Mostly just listen to your instructor, watch what they do, work your different drills over and over again. You got to be fast in a tournament to score a point. So work on speed, work on deception. Too many things to give you one kind of distilled thing.
Oh, that's perfect.
Forms, watch yourself, absolutely, and be critical of yourself. We mentioned that earlier, watching video of yourself. That's not an easy tool that I had back then. I mean, we had videotape where you had to tape something on videotape and then take it home and put it in the VCR and watch it back and rewind and back. Nowadays with digital recording, hop on your phone, get somebody to record you and watch what you really look like, and then refine and refine and refine. I can remember a lot of people told me stories of Master Fisher where he would just stand and do chumbi in a mirror again and again and again and ask him why and say, no detail is too small. So every detail. I can remember competing with those guys back in the day. Edon, we used to talk about doing jindo, and you do the move on one leg where if you slightly lost your balance, that took you from first place to out of medal contention because people were that good. So just continue to refine, continue to watch yourself, listen to instructors and be critical of yourself if that's really something you want.
Right. I also, just to add, the journey to train and get ready for it is really the value of tournaments. That's what I tell participants all the time. And it's talking to someone that's like, I don't know if it's too stressful to do tournaments. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing them. So it's like, I hear that, but at the same time, like if you train hard, right, the benefits of training hard to get ready for a tournament are going to be with you, forever.
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's not about, winning. Yes, obviously that's a goal if you're going to go and compete, but it should not be your main goal. Right. Like I said, I was a very uncoordinated child. I competed in tournaments from the very early ages, but I never placed until probably I was a red belt or blue belt in anything. And then after that, it's self-betterment. You learn through the competition how to make yourself better, and eventually it just kind of happens if you stick with it. It's not the driving force. The driving force is to make yourself better.
Talking about giving tips and tricks to your students. We talked a little bit about your studio, but Keystone Martial Arts, I believe earlier, did you say that you started in 2002?
Yes.
We're coming up, believe it or not, 20 years
Yeah.
next year. So
Yeah, it's hard for me to fathom in some ways, but
yeah. So maybe talk to us about how you eventually came to start Keystone, and maybe some memories of training and teaching.
so yeah, I mean, I won't pretend it wasn't not entirely, but I won't pretend it wasn't at least in part self-serving. I talked about it a little earlier that, to be a master, you had to start a school.
Right.
Couldn't do anything in the Philadelphia area. So eventually I did move. Within 3 months of moving to Pittsburgh, I'd found a very small YMCA at the time, but they had plans for expansion to something much bigger. So I stuck with that for a few years. We were in a tiny little aerobics room, but eventually it did grow, and that helped me grow as well. As far as starting the school goes, growing up, the Masters of the World Taekwondo Association, pretty much my heroes. I mean, you can list out the people, some of which are no longer with us, but you got Master Vaugh, obviously, and Master Godwin, and Master Beam, and Master Casarano, and Master Britt, and all these. Even when I first started, some of the Korean masters, Master Kwan would come to our gut test. So just a lot of that was my role models growing up. That's what I wanted to be. So in order to do that, it was about starting school. To be honest, at the time when I was young in my 20s, I didn't have a lot of designs on teaching children. I wasn't really that good at it. I didn't have a lot of a good feel for it. I wanted to teach adults, but if you want to have a commercial school, pretty much in today's world, unless you're really, really catering to a niche market or a certain kind of martial art, and Tang Soo Do, you pretty much have to teach children. So that made me a better instructor, more patient, more able to analyze how to teach, and then through that, more able to analyze how to become better myself at my own skills and to be able to convey that to somebody else. So, I mean, yeah, it's been 20 years. I have, some people that have been there since pretty much the beginning. One of my students is now a master. My first student, actually, Master Greco, was my first adult student and now has his own school at the Butler YMCA. So it's been a journey, but it's been a great journey as well. Obviously, I saw myself and Master Ricky Jorgensen get promoted to master as well through that process. So yeah, I mean, it came about mostly because I really wanted to achieve that goal of Kodanja and be part of that community, but it ended up being a more positive and transformative experience in the long run.
That's great. And I remember when Master Greco, I saw him at Master's Clinic for the first time, and I said, you used to be the guy that you used to play the guitar at the talent show at Region 8 Black Belt Clinic. He's like, man, how'd you remember that? I'm like, I remember the face.
Yeah.
But that's great. And it must've been a great moment when you had the opportunity to see him get promoted.
Absolutely.
Because Master Vaughn is the exception to the rule of, being able to be around long enough to kind of be prolific and create masters and instructors. But for us mere mortals, it's a little harder.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, even getting to people to Samdan has been a challenge. Yeah. I have a few Samdans too, but I feel like, honestly, put a lot of work into these kids, and they get right to that age where they get to eat on, and then they go to college. Yeah. It's like, okay, you get a small percentage that comes back, but it's like, all right, I need to get some more Samdans.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And we're actually really good. Like, we have quite a few pretty good Chodan and Edon like teens that are in that 14, 15, 16-year-old range that you don't always have a lot of. And you just hope that you can continue to keep them. But then, like you said, they eventually leave. And then you have that age gap of like 20 to 30 that is just non-existent. So we're we're getting close to the hour mark, sir. Again, I want to thank you for joining me. And is there anything as we start to wrap up that we haven't touched base on that you'd like to talk about?
Just one of the things, I know she won't like me kind of tooting her horn for it, but I know personally that the family issue we talked, that was a little bit about some of the questions you sent me ahead of time. Just I couldn't have done any of this without Master Ricky Jorgensen as well. I met her in college. We got married shortly after, and just she's invaluable. I know personally how valuable that is. To have a wife that is part of this and supportive, and you have those same passions and those same goals. That 100% couldn't do it without her, and she absolutely makes me look better than I am. She runs our Region 22 championships. She helps out so many ways in the school with the business side of things that I can't even tell you. She's much better organized mind than I am in that aspect. So she runs the YMCA school, and just, I just want to say I absolutely appreciate that and recognize her, even though she'll hate to be recognized in that way.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought that up. I had the opportunity to be in the same candidate class as her. And she was one of those people where she's, kind of keeps to herself and is quiet. But as soon as you get out on the floor, she works hard and puts in the effort. And you can tell that, she's been around forever. You look at her DON number, it's like, whoa, your DON number is way lower than mine.
Yeah, she actually was an EDON before she even came to the World Tongue Sudo Association. So like I said, she was International Tongue Sudo and Master CS Kim, and she walked in on Master K. She trained for a while, literally as a white belt. And Master K told her one day, I'll give you an option. Typically World Tongue Sudo, they bring you in one rank under what you are. So I'll give you an option right now. I'll give you a blue belt and you can test, or you can just take your Chodan now. And she's like, no, I want to test for it. So she trained as Chodan Bo, and then she accepted that going down from Edon to Chodan, and stayed Edon for a really long time. Eventually I convinced her that we couldn't have students testing for Samdan while she was still in Edon. And then from there moved, kind of a better progression rate up to Master from there. But yeah, she's been doing this darn near as long as I have.
Yeah, it's that same thing where we talked about earlier about not wanting to have that pride. And some people, it's like, I understand you don't want to you don't need the rank,
right?
But it's nice to be, at least I'm sure for you knew how good of a martial artist and how much she deserved it, and you wanted it for her probably more than she did.
Yeah, probably in a lot of ways that's true.
And it's funny, I appreciate that mindset. And I've talked about this with some of my friends where it's like, sometimes it's the promotion or, the recognition is not about you. It's about the people that are around you,
right,
to appreciate that. And so it was nice to see when I saw pictures of when she finally got her master's promotions. That's pretty awesome. And I'm sure another proud moment for you.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely.
I'm excited. My wife tested at the same time you did in December. She's promoting the 5th Dan at US Nationals.
Excellent.
I'm probably more excited about it than she is, because she's the same way. She doesn't like the spotlight put on her. She'd much rather put it on others and help others. And it sounds like your wife's the same way.
Oh, very much so.
Awesome. Well, again, sir, thank you. It was a long time coming to do an interview with you. I appreciate you taking the time out and joining us.
I appreciate your time as well. Thank you, and keep up the good work that you've been doing, Master Watson, with all the masters and the association. Maybe I'll get back around to doing it again, but I think it's definitely well in your hands. So we appreciate you continuing the project.
Well, if anyone is out there and would like to have like to be interviewed by Master Jorgensen, by all means, reach out. Well, thank you, sir. I will see you next month at U.S. Nationals.
Yes, looking forward to it. Anybody that's going there, don't hesitate to say hello, whether you know us or not. Masters are just people too. So
That's right.
Introduce yourselves, and I'll be super happy to see everybody, and hopefully everything will go well. And it'll be great to see Grandmaster Strong get promoted as well.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I'm excited about that. Yeah, look for Master Jorgensen in the blue polo that says security. He's not hard to he's hard to miss.
All right, everybody have a great week. Tung Su, and
Tung Su,
see you
sir.
at Nationals.
All right.